And the first game then is going to be on Ghost Lake between Adhafang playing Odin. That's usually a god that you don't really see players playing all that often, but with Adhafang, well, he's pretty good with basically all the civilizations, and especially aggressive ones, as he's pretty good at raiding, especially with his Poseidon, but Odin is pretty much the same god in that kind of department, so let's see how well he will do against DarKsouL, who is also pretty decent player, especially he is kind of old school. He has been coming back into the game in like last, I don't know, 2-3 months or something like that, and he will be playing Hades. So looking just at the gods, I would be kind of favoring the Hades here, but not really all that much, as obviously with all the balance changes, yeah, the meta has changed quite a bit, but let's see how this will develop between those two players here. So let's unpause, and the first we have a look at, and let's put on the score as well. Not really sure why the game is not remembering that, but at any rate, we can see that right now DarKsouL is moving to the left for his starting piggies, which is obviously the correct decision, as it's much faster than the potentially berries here next to the tower. Otherwise, quite a lot of goats for him at the very start, but I don't really see an extra hunt. He should be seeing something like I don't know, some elks or whatnot, so he will be probably having them somewhere here. With Adhafang right now casting his big hunt, we'll be seeing that in just a moment where it was cast, because it's usually kind of obvious. I'm really curious, where is he having the very early hunt? So far he doesn't see it. He already sees one of the relics here for cheaper armory research cost, which is pretty nice, especially when he is a Hades, so potentially he can go for Forge of, or rather Forge of Olympus, and then have even more cheap, rather even cheaper upgrades than is usual. So let's switch into his opponent then, Adhafang, who has cast this big hunt somewhere at the bottom. Probably on the starting hunt. Well, don't really see it now. That's kind of curious. So where has he actually cast it? Has it been maybe on goats? Not exactly sure, but he did cast it. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. And it maybe could have also been on this hunt here, but not probably, because obviously they're just 5 elks, and that's a standard hunt, exactly as we were looking for our first player, and he's having it. Well, that's quite far away actually from him, and no wonder that he didn't discover it, but it's going to be quite nice surprise for him when he actually does, because that's going to be a very safe hunt at the very back together with the second hunt here as well, and I'm really thinking that he will be quite happy about it, as if he wants to go for this TC, which I think he will want to, he will be having quite nicely protected hunt for a long time into the classical age. So let's get back to the map of Adhafang at this point, who is still using the boards here, and yeah, it was on the boards. It was great hunt on the boards actually. You can right now see the dead body here, and since the normal spawn has been 3, looking at the red player who had 3 of those, this was definitely the place where the great hunt has been cast. So yep, that's a bit of a surprise, or rather mystery result right there, and quite a lot of goats at this point for Adhafang, which is slightly curious, but yeah, you usually see that Greek players are having quite a bit extra. You can say that he does have extra 11 against 12. Well, not really anything extra, basically the same, and that is curious because usually, as I said, the Greeks do have quite a lot of them, more than their opponents, because of the faster scout, but so far that is not happening here. The extra hunt here on the right side, that's basically no man's land, even though I would have to say, looking at the spawn, it's probably rats, but really a bit more forward, so not anybody's really at this point. This one pretty much the same. And looking at the hunt and the berries next to the opponent of DarKsouL, Adhafang, he will be quite interested in keeping this hunt and these berries safe together with this TC also. So probably I would be expecting that Adhafang would be developing into the right side, whereas DarKsouL to the left. Right now also dropping the temple, so he's expecting advance at about 430, 440, which is kind of decent. And we also see some extra relic on the left, which is a better house and manor hit points. Well, that's not really all that great. It's literally great for Atlanteans, not really for the rest, but still, it is extra hit points and will be making your life a bit more difficult when you are going for an offensive and trying to kill your opponent's housing and potentially house him up. Yep, temple being dropped by Adhafang as well, with this guy potentially even advancing now. Yeah, he already is, and through Athena. So is this maybe going to be some early aggression? Well, not really sure at this point, but really could be happening. It really could be pretty soon. Bit of a stutter here, unfortunately. Not really sure why. But at any rate, we are seeing hen ducks being researched. And I would be thinking just the hunting dogs. And where is the extra mining camp here? 1 and storehouse number 2 here. And this is kind of curious that he's actually having double storehouses right now, because it is eating from his resources on the wood line here, which basically means that he cannot afford to go for pickaxe as soon as he could otherwise. And that's really not ideal. But he's just expecting that he will be raided pretty hard in the very early game, so he's just trying to be prepared before that happens. But still, a bit more optimal play could be made here. And looking how he's also still having 1 on the brain here, he's maybe hoping for some kind of Minotaur pretty soon. Well, we'll see about that. Still a bit of a stutter here, which is really curious. Not really sure why. I will try to do something about that. I'm going to turn off my browser, which could help. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. Seems it did a bit. And let's have a look at the upgrades on Adhafang here. So far, absolutely nothing. Or rather, yeah. Of course, on the card you wouldn't see it, but on the villages we see both for the wood and the gold. So that's a definite advantage. And also having husbandry. So that's quite strong echo from Adhafang at this stage. Whereas Red is having just husbandry with hunting dogs and hen ducks. So we are missing the 1 upgrade on the gold still. And is he at least going for it? Not yet, but what is interesting right now is that he's going for double stable together with 1 archer range, which is kind of a reasonable stance. But looking how he's actually Hades and having pretty strong archers, I would be expecting maybe that he would be going for double archer range and much more heavier on the wood line here. Yeah, this is exactly what he was protecting for by the storehouse on the left. So that's a pretty good job on that right now, but still. To finish on my thought, because DarKsouls are pretty strong in the classical age, especially against the Norse players, and I would be really expecting that he would be going for quite a lot of extra archers, because obviously that would be quite a lot of help in the early game in there, as they can basically kill even horses when they are amassed in enough numbers. Bit of a fight between Minotaur and the Valkyrie here, with help from Ajax pretty soon. And this will mean that this hunt will be safe just for the remainder of the time, which is not really going to be all that long, especially seeing how he is having just 4 villages here. Yeah, he's basically just preparing to move somewhere else, which is probably going to be for the berries here, as obviously so far I don't really see any kind of extra attempt to go somewhere else. And looking at this Fog of 4, he does know about this hunt rather, and the hunt on the bottom, but I'm not really sure that he will be going there for 1 reason, and that reason is because he at this point knows that the hunt is not safe at all. So yep, this will probably develop into him being a bit more defensive than yeah, this kind of adventurous food gathering on the top side of the map. Bit of a Hippicons against Heresirs with a few raiding cavalry, but it's going to be stopped pretty soon. But it did buy DarKsouL exactly the time that he needed to protect the villages and allow them to finish with the hunt here exactly at the right spot at the right time. So pretty good job on that. But let's have a look somewhere else. You can also see that Adhafang is going for a lot of aggression, sending raiding cavalry right next to his opponent base right now, just sending them a bit back, as he recognizes that he needs basically to somehow reform his army, as he's not right now having the advantage anymore, as DarKsouL is doing a pretty good job with massing the Hippicons and also the DarKsouls, which are not in the army yet, but are coming in pretty soon. Looking at this economy, he seems to be having quite a lot of wood, which would definitely signal yet another archer range would be just a pretty good idea, as he would be able to basically amass archers without any kind of problem. But he needs to be quite a lot careful here, because obviously this is going to be a bit hard for him to defend if he is caught off guard on potentially double battlefields, like on the left and potentially on the right on the gold as well, because obviously the forest fire has freed quite a lot of space here. Yeah, this wasn't really any kind of raiding, just the Kataskopos getting caught in the crossfire here, potentially trying to get at those dwarves, but obviously it's not going to be all that strong, and we see that Adhafang is recognizing that he's not really going to be having any kind of success with prolonged aggression, especially against Hades, and he's opting for a second TC, which is definitely a good idea, as with the hunt here on the left being basically his for the taking, right now finishing with it, and slightly protecting it very nicely with the Raven here, so that he actually knows when the opponent is going there. He feels pretty much safe and quite happy to go for second TC and basically outboom his opponent. I can also see this guy going somewhere for the gold at the bottom, probably. Let's switch into Adhafang. Is he's ready to advance into the next stage? I would be kinda thinking so, because looking at the amount of food and also at the amount of gold, I would be really thinking that he is maybe attempting to go for the next stage in a reasonable amount of time, because quite frankly he's having quite a huge amount of raiding cavalry at this point, and this could be exactly enough that it would take for him to put his opponent in his place and basically allow him, or rather not allow him, to do any kind of raiding himself and also harass his economy as much as he can. On the left, basically DarKsouL doing the same thing as Adhafang was doing on the right, making sure that he knows what's happening with the hunts there. But here is a bit of an engagement with Adhafang advancing, upgrading into medium raiders and trying to fight here for his opponent, but this is exactly the moment where Greek classical age strength is coming into play, as he's having a pretty decent army of Hypicons together with Toxots, and this is exactly what is pretty dangerous for the Norse players here. Bit of a heavy raiding in the opponent's base, because the majority of the army has been out of the base altogether, right now returning back, but that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it, and I don't really think that Adhafang is going to be having any kind of luck in finding some kind of echo. But I would be rather advising DarKsouL to really finish the wall here, because if he doesn't, he's going to be quite open from this side, especially on the gold, and that's not going to be very safe for him. He does have a bit of a reasonably safe gold here, so if he wants to go for that, he will need to take this TC and wall up somewhere from here. Maybe use even the TC here and here. And that would be kind of safe, but he really needs to do that before he moves there, because if he doesn't, he's going to be running a lot of risk with the raiding cavalry here. Still a lot of stutter, so I will just turn off some graphical options. Not really sure why it should be so problematic. I just turn everything off. That we have as much performance as possible, but it doesn't really seem to be helping all that much, a bit at least. So let's see if it will be developing into some kind of better gameplay performance from my computer. Really kind of weird, because usually I can play without any kind of stutter or whatnot, but this game seems to be a bit more demanding. Maybe it's because of the Fog of War North, but yeah, we'll see quite soon about that. If it's going to be better or not. So it seems like that Adhafang's actually early aggression is right now being dulled, and DarKsouL is going into an offensive. And let's see if he can do something. He's also going for a second TC, basically to even the playing field, and he's also having quite a decent amount of army on the left, which is going to basically join with the army that he's having on the right, and potentially that could be quite deadly for Adhafang, because if he can go, for example, at the bottom for the gold here, that could be pretty horrible for Adhafang, because if he can position the army between them and the TC, that would be quite easy to actually kill a lot of them at this point. Well, that isn't happening though, and DarKsouL is being denied the second TC, so it's definitely a very good play by Adhafang, and very crucial at this stage, because as long as he can deny the second TC to his opponent, he's going to be aiming for as much advantage in the economy as he can, because obviously having second TC versus 1 in the early classical age is a pretty huge advantage for the late game, and this game seems to be definitely heading that way. A lot of raiding cavalry are dead here, but it's kind of worth it, I think, because the denial of the second TC is really quite strong indeed, especially when you see that Adhafang is through to the heroic age with the Scuddy here. Medium Hypicons is also yet another point to be mentioning here for DarKsouL, because obviously that means that he can basically stay in the classical age and fight even against heroic armies from his opponent, as heavy Hypicons or other medium Hypicons are pretty good at that. And well, let's see if that's going to be something that he's actually happy about or not. So far I'm really thinking that not, because Adhafang is having the advantage in economy, and right now he's trying to push for map control on the right side with building the hill fort, and he will be quite probably aiming to basically steal this TC from his opponent, especially when you see the second hill fort here, and that's a pretty decent game plan, but might be forced actually to rethink that, as DarKsouL is right now having a pretty decent army at opponent's base, right now finishing the gold here, and also the berries, and he will potentially be forced to move somewhere else. He does have extra berries at the bottom, so he doesn't need to build farms yet, but the gold might be a bit of a problem, because he does have only the one at the bottom that is covered by him, but otherwise not really anything. Pretty strong army right now, supported by those frost giants, which are exactly the correct unit here. As you can see, that DarKsouL, yeah, they didn't have any heroes, just the Ajax here, but the curse did come exactly at the right moment, and that is exactly the point in the game where Adhafang has to retreat and potentially will be denied the hill fort. Well, he won't. He won't, because Red has right now developed, or rather discovered that quite too late, and well, it's still a pretty good game for Adhafang, and even though DarKsouL is having a pretty decent army himself, he does have to be careful at this stage, because he doesn't have as strong economy as his opponent, and well, he cannot really afford to lose this army at this stage. Even though both are heroic, he needs to finish the wall in here before he can actually go into some adventure with his economy, or rather with his army, but well, that's not really happening so far. And is Adhafang going to use Frost? Right now he probably could, with the restoration being cast. Yep, exactly. That's exactly the correct answer, because he was basically waiting for this Adhafang, I would say. He was waiting for his opponent to engage in some huge battle. Then, hopefully, the restoration will be played, which is basically a waste at this stage. And well, Adhafang cast has got power on this, which is giving him all the extra time that he needs to, well, dish some damage, but I would be quite happier if he actually went for a bit of raiding, because obviously those guys are having 99% armor on everything, so they are receiving just 1 damage from all of those guys, and that's a bit of a waste of time, I would say, for Adhafang here, but still, he thinks it's worth it. I really don't. But, well, he's still having the map advantage here, and definitely is taking as much advantage of that as he can. Right now finishing with the hunt here at the top, because he basically can, and also trying to develop on the gold. But he's been raided there, and that's basically confirming the point that I was making a bit earlier, that Adhafang doesn't have any kind of save gold, and he does need to actually take this a bit more slower and a bit more carefully, because otherwise he's going to lose quite a lot of villages and potentially even the momentum in the map once the gold on the bottom side of the map runs out. So right now Adhafang has lost all the armies here. He's trying to steal the TC from DarKsouL, which is right now under his power due to the hill fort, but he really needs to be super careful, because the army from DarKsouL is right next to it, and well, he should be aware of it, so I'm not exactly sure why he isn't moving there. He's just right now aiming for the villages here, and well, that's not a bad idea overall, because right now switching from the Fog of War off, that's going to be quite a lot of the release. Because obviously Adhafang is not at the right spot, and he's having all kinds of trouble fighting in the middle against those shades from Hades, and also the Chiron and some of the extra units that are here, like the Epicon and whatnot. So yeah, this is a bit of a raiding from DarKsouL, doing a pretty good job at that, while he is also developing his economy. I'm going to have a quick look into the post game to actually see how they are doing in that department. 69 villages for Adhafang, DarKsouL just 50. That's actually a pretty decent difference here, and looking at the amount gathered, yeah, that's quite a lot of difference, like 5,000 more resources gathered for Adhafang, and that could really be making quite a lot of difference in the game overall. I wouldn't be really expecting any kind of upgrades, but surprisingly we do have Copper Mail for DarKsouL, which is interesting at this stage, because I would be expecting him as a Hades and Greek with access to Forge of Olympus to actually go for potentially the Mythical Age. And even though as a non-Zeus it's not as easy to get the favor, it's still such a huge advantage that you might be really wanting to go for that if you can. That's not happening though, and Adhafang seems to be really aiming for as much as advantage as he can, finishing the third TC, so right now fighting 3 versus 2, and the last TC that is still free is on the left, and it's not really controlled by Adhafang, so it's still basically up for the taking for DarKsouL, and if he did have some kind of plan to go there, well, it could still be his, but look at how he advanced through Aphrodite and actually not through, oh god damn it, the guy with Underworld Passage. Well, that's pretty bad. Let's just have a look into the tech tree. Yeah, of course, Apollo. Just couldn't remember it. It's so common in the games that I cast for RTS League. It's kinda shameful that I did not remember, but well, at any rate, this is exactly what was happening here. And yeah, you can see that actually DarKsouL is right now aiming for it, and he will be attempting to steal it from his opponent with those villages, but I would be sending quite a lot more at this stage. Bit of idols here, and let's see if he can actually take it right now without any kind of heroes. He could be having a bit of a problem against this Frost Giant, especially if somebody else is going there, and I wouldn't be really surprised if Adhafang used a special power and actually turned some of those into a bit of a military here, because he does need all the extra help he can get, and especially when he's, well, I was going to say that he's not exactly winning because of the numbers here, but look at how Adhafang is employing exactly the correct unit that he needs, and the Zeus Carls as a direct counter to the archers. That is a pretty good battle for him, and with the addition of Jarls, he's doing a pretty good job also against the Hypaspis, which are the counter unit to exactly those Zeus Carls. So here we see that there, and a bit of a disco mode as it was darkening on the map. Well, that's going to be a bit problematic for DarKsouL at this stage of the game, because he really needs all the echo that he can get, and right now he's basically forced to hide all the villages, as obviously he is very tightly packed in his home base. Yeah, this is literally just a quarter of the map, and having everything in there, and he's losing quite a lot of villies, and also having his army engaged in there, as obviously he cannot really afford to let those wolves deal any kind of damage, potentially buildings or whatnot, as they are pretty strong overall. And well, this extra Fimbulwinter was exactly what Adhafang needed to get back on his feet and prevent the TC from being stolen. So good job on that. And is he going to follow with actually capturing it? DarKsouL right now doesn't have any kind of resources to advance into a Mythic Age, whereas Adhafang is having pop limit at 160 with 3 TCs, and is having a pretty decent amount of resources, so yep, he's definitely going for a TC. Let's have a look at some of the upgrades here. Just having infantry, so he's not even going for anything in the armor yet. He's basically just hoping to win on sheer numbers, which is pretty much a legitimate strategy, especially when he's going to be 4 versus 2 TCs very soon, and I don't really dispute that kind of decision, especially with the pretty strong army of those Jarls here. Wolf Jarls at that. Yeah, let's see how we can actually finish with the raid in here. Sentinels being cast by DarKsouL. This is going to be the TC where most of the battles are going to be happening, and I'm kind of waiting. 45 TCs also pretty nicely going to help, and yep, this is the power of Odin's Ravens, and allowing you to see where your opponent is gathering gold quite easily. So yep, this is a pretty decent raiding, and also pretty decent amount of units going to be dead for DarKsouL at this stage, as I'm really thinking that Adhafang will be rather emerging from this battle victorious, and we can also see a market from DarKsouL. So is he actually thinking about advancing next stage? Well, he cannot really. So he's probably just hoping that he can actually sell quite a lot of wood for gold and replace his army through that, but so far it doesn't seem like he's successful, and the sheer amount and strength of heavy raiders together with those great Jarls right now is doing its job, and especially with the copper shields right now being in place, the strength of Hades in the archers is going to be nullified pretty much altogether. Yeah, so this battle is won. At the bottom we see a bit of a raiding by DarKsouL's archers, but well, even though they have disrupted the building of the TC for a moment, it's not really going to be anything lasting, as obviously those cavalry guys are going to be taking care of this nuisance, and we can already see the replacement of the infantry coming in to build the TC to the fullest. On the right side, we also see a bit of a development as Adhafang is basically trying to protect this gold from his opponent and also amassing some kind of army in throwing Axemen and Wolfsarks and Huskarls as well, trying to prevent exactly what his opponent is building against him. And this is quite interesting because usually you see just players developing into some kind of monotheistic army in a sense, like they are just building two kinds of units or whatnot the whole game and trying to push through their opponents. But in this game we see a lot of switches quite all the time. Basically DarKsouL switching into Hypaspists, into hoplites, into prodromos, and this is basically forcing Adhafang to do the same and switching the units around, because right now with all cavalry he would be quite susceptible to both those hoplites together with those prodromos. Yep, this is a definitely good reaction from DarKsouL, building extra towers next to the gold, because this is one of the last golds that he actually has, with the one at the bottom, or rather at the back. The 3000 gold, that's quite a lot, especially when he doesn't really need to worry about this Raven all that much. And if he can close the wall in here, like about here and here, he could be quite safely gathering gold for a lot of game to come. With another tower being built, but on the right it seems to be developing into something a bit more interesting, and definitely DarKsouL should be a bit more careful about this right side. He does have some archers here which are basically idle, but he's also running into a pretty huge risk with those wood wheelies, and once he runs out of this wood line, he still does have one at the back. He will be very open to allow Adhafang to go for the main TC just through the army from this right side. There's definitely something that is going to happen, I think, as Adhafang is just waiting for the right moment in the game. But in the meantime, he is engaging his opponent at the main battlefield, which is at the left DC of DarKsouL, and also with the extra towers here. I kinda think that this is pretty much the last chance for DarKsouL to somehow change this game, or rather turn this game around. Because if he can build enough towers protecting the gold, and potentially even his extra foot economy, or maybe slowly close up on this gold as well, so that he does have some kind of protection in there, he could still get back into the game. But, well, I'm not exactly thinking that Adhafang can, or rather will, let this game get out of hand. But really, I wouldn't really say it's over, because if DarKsouL can somehow manage to advance into the mythical age, he could be still pretty strong with Colossi and whatnot, and with Gastraphids he could be leveling the fourth base on the right side very easily. And there wouldn't be all that much that Adhafang could be doing against that. Yep, it seems like Adhafang cannot really push through with the sheer amount of units that he has with those extra 2 TCs, so he's right now going for a bit of a building spam on the left as well, so that he can basically, yeah, close the hands around his opponent's throat and, yeah, strangle him on the resources and also on the pressure overall on his army. Okay, so Adhafang is moving through the right side to the left, which is slightly curious, as he's basically thinking that he doesn't want to somehow surprise his opponent from both sides, but he thinks that he can actually push through by the TC advantage, and yep, that's not a bad idea. But look at how he is fighting in a pretty very bad spot, under fire from 4 towers, sentinels, and also the TC. I'm kinda thinking he needs to rethink his plan at this point and needs at least a bit of upgrades, and really make sure that he is on the pop limit. So far he isn't. Let's have a look at the upgrades. He's having bronze mail, bronze weapons, heavy infantry, and iron shields. Well, he's very close to actually having full upgrades. Whereas I was looking for DarKsouL. Copper mail, copper weapons, and medium archers. Oh well, yeah, that's quite a huge difference. But still, look at how DarKsouL is able to defend with 2 TCs against 4, and with such underwhelming upgrades as opposed to his opponent Adhafang. Well, it's definitely telling you about the strength of Greek units right there. It seems like that right now DarKsouL is being forced back into his base, with Adhafang trying to gather as much gold as he can from his opponent potentially before DarKsouL goes there with some kind of surprising attack or whatever to reclaim the TC, but well, that doesn't really seem to be on the table so far, as really DarKsouL is having all kinds of troubles, and all his attention is basically captured by defending the main battlefield on the left side. Just going to have a look at some economy upgrades, both saw with quarry and irrigation. Well, that's decent. And looking at villagers from Adhafang. blood control. Yeah, pretty much all the upgrades that he can get. So that's basically max economy for Adhafang, and this is just waiting for when he can push through, I guess. Because if he can't push through in a reasonable time, he will be allowing DarKsouL to basically go into the game. Finishing the fortress here is going to be quite a decent idea, as that's yet again going to protect the gold very nicely. And also these farms here, which are very crucial. Just waiting for a bit more villages that are probably right now building the fortress to amend those farms here. Right now though, with upgrading to heavy toxots, that's also a pretty important one at this stage of the game, it seems like that DarKsouL might be having a chance and will be able to get rid of those buildings on the left. But at the same time, finally, Adhafang is employing a bit of a raiding, and this is, oh yeah, Fenris Wolf. Fenris Wolves are going for a bit of a prowl, and as you can see, they are pretty damn fast. Pretty damn fast, and having a pretty decent attack, 40 attack. Wow. That's a lot, and he's going for the gold at the back and will be trying to disrupt the trade route as well. This is definitely something that you don't really see all that often, and hopefully we will see quite a lot more with the balance changes here. So yep, this is a pretty decent raid right there. And we'll be killing quite a lot of villagers, and I'm not really sure that even Achilles can actually stop this. You can see that even though he's fighting mythical units here, he's losing quite a lot of hit points to those guys, as obviously they are having a huge, literally huge attack. 40 attack is pretty brutal, and well, he did quite a lot of damage, but against those 3 heroes, he needs to be a bit more careful right now. The attack on the base on the left has been stopped right now, with DarKsouL being forced back to his defensive with those extra towers, and also this fortress. How many upgrades does he have? Granulation, so we could definitely get something extra, right? Guard towers and whatnot. Well, oil. Well, he could definitely use something else than just what he has, but he also needs to advance into the Mythical Age. Adhafang having pretty strong echo at this point, whereas DarKsouL not. He's having a really big problem to somehow stabilize his economy, but look at how he's fighting against 2 TC's extras. Yeah, especially with the pretty good raid from the right side right now, with the portable rams. This is going to be a bit hard for him to deal with. He was building, or rather has built, a fortress on the right to defend, and is trying to retake the TC through a very nice wall here to protect the Potrobolos. But look at how Adhafang was a bit faster with the attack from the right side. Yeah, this doesn't really seem like DarKsouL is going to be finishing with taking down the TC, and this is really looking quite dire for him, as he's going to lose his main TC on the right side. Yeah, goodbye TC, this is just a question of time also with this fortress, and on the left, even though he's not facing any kind of attack, so it seems like basically a full switch to the right side from Adhafang, it's going to be quite hard for him to stop this, because right now Adhafang is doing a pretty clever thing by trying to house his opponent. So right now you can see DarKsouL is just 90 pop, and he's not going to be making any kind of extra army once this dies, because obviously, yeah, he needs to build houses first before that. Right now going for it. But I'm really thinking that that kind of downtime in the military production is going to be exactly the nail in the coffin and the victory condition for Adhafang at this stage. Oh, a bit of raiding here, kind of stray raiding from DarKsouL. But well, let's see how long is he actually going to take for DarKsouL to maybe think of some kind of special strategy. Right now moving with villages in, but he doesn't even have the resources for extra TC, so he can't really build it. And this really seems like this might be it, but let's see if there's going to be some kind of change in the game plan so far for both of these players. With the Nemean Lion trying to make a difference, and a lot of towers still being built by DarKsouL, which is a decent idea, especially against all those units here, but well, when you don't really have any kind of support from normal units, it's just going to be all that easier for Adhafang to get rid of it. Yes, this is it, and Adhafang is winning. But I have to say that DarKsouL did pretty good, especially in the first half of the game, and he defended quite well against his opponent who was having a TC advantage for quite a huge majority of it. It was a pretty nice game between gods that didn't really employ, or rather include, the Chinese from the new expansion, and we have seen quite interesting stuff. Especially I liked the Fenris Wolf Brute that was radiant the gold here at the back near the end of the game. That was very nice indeed. But well, quite nicely controlled by Adhafang, I have to say. So let's have a look at the post game. with economy being pretty strong for Adhafang. Well, he did have quite a lot of villages a lot earlier than his opponent, with the second TC being built for him, I don't know, at least 5 minutes earlier than his opponent, something like that. And that's a pretty huge difference in the early classical age. And that's a huge difference. 6,000, 2,000, 11,000. Yeah, that's a lot. And that does tend to make a lot of difference in the game. Decent upgrade time into the classical age, but unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to raid Adhafang really all that much, or like at all. And it was more in control of Adhafang from the very early game. That really did help him as well. Heavy Huskarl, heavy Toxotes. Can kinda guess how this is going to go. Yeah, this is like 8 minutes, and next DC4 at like, I don't know, 12? Yeah, so about 4 minutes difference between the second TC. That's really a lot. Okay then, GG.